No one was supposed to hear what Marcus Anderson said that night. It wasn't delivered to cameras. It wasn't meant for headlines. It was spoken quietly, casually, almost carelessly. But once those words escaped, they changed everything. We were always close. That never stopped, not even after Harry. The moment that sentence surfaced, it didn't just spark curiosity, it detonated it. Because if the man once known as Meghan Markle's closest confidant was telling the truth, then the carefully packaged love story the world had been sold wasn't built on romance alone. It was built on history, on loyalty, on emotional ties that never truly broke, and on a connection that refused to disappear, no matter how powerful her new life became. For years, Marcus Anderson existed in Meghan's orbit long before royal titles, global interviews, and palace walls. He wasn't an accessory in her story. He was embedded in it. Some described him as her guide, others whispered he was her strategist, and a few quietly believed he was the only person who ever truly understood how she thought, how she moved, how she planned. Which is why when his alleged confession began circulating, people didn't just lean in, they reevaluated everything. Because the most destabilizing revelations don't come from strangers, they come from the ones who helped build you. Before his name became entangled with speculation, Marcus Anderson was simply a socially intelligent young man from Ontario. He wasn't born into privilege, he cultivated it. He learned how to read people, how to navigate rooms, how to make influential individuals feel seen, valued, important. That skill became his currency. His rise accelerated inside the elite world of Soho House, a members-only ecosystem built on discretion, power, and exclusivity. It wasn't just a job, it was access. And Marcus became more than an employee. He became a connector, a gatekeeper, someone who quietly shaped who met whom, who gained entry, who stayed relevant. That's where Meghan entered his life. Back then, she wasn't a duchess. She was an ambitious actress filming in Toronto. Their connection wasn't romantic at the beginning, at least not outwardly, but it was immediate, intense, mutually beneficial. She had drive, he had reach. She had charm, he had access. Doors began opening, invitations appeared, introductions followed, and slowly, deliberately, a new version of Meghan's world began to take shape. Not accidental, curated. Those who observed them together often remarked on the closeness, the ease, the way they communicated without effort, the way they gravitated toward each other in rooms full of people. It didn't look performative, it looked familiar. As her visibility grew, so did his presence. Not loud, not obvious, just constant. Trips across Europe, quiet dinners, invitations to places most people never see. Madrid, London, Istanbul. Always near each other but rarely in the spotlight together long enough to raise questions. Their connection lived in the background, unnoticed by the public, but unmistakable to those who paid attention. When uncertainty crept into her life, he reportedly grounded her. When opportunities stalled, he intervened. When strategy was needed, he advised. Their dynamic didn't resemble a casual friendship. It resembled something deeper, something layered, something interdependent. And then came 2016, a countryside retreat, a carefully arranged weekend, a discreet guest list, and an introduction that would alter the global narrative forever. Prince Harry entered the picture. On the surface, the story appeared simple. Two people meet, chemistry sparks, romance follows. But behind the scenes, insiders have long suggested that the environment, the timing, and the connection itself didn't happen by coincidence. Marcus was reportedly involved in the logistics, the invitations, the setup, the proximity. When the date ended, Meghan reportedly reached out to Marcus first, nervous, energized, curious. "He's different," she allegedly told him. The response attributed to Marcus was quieter but telling. "Then make sure he sees the version of you the world doesn't." Advice like that can change everything. From that moment forward, 3 lives became increasingly intertwined. Harry saw Meghan as liberation, as escape, as emotional refuge. Marcus saw her as someone he had helped shape, guide, elevate. And Meghan stood between 2 worlds that would eventually collide. At first, things seemed balanced. Marcus and Harry were cordial, friendly, present at the same gatherings. But subtle dynamics don't remain invisible forever. Harry reportedly noticed that Meghan's energy shifted when Marcus was around. She relaxed, she laughed differently, she appeared more grounded, more herself. For someone already carrying emotional scars, that difference didn't go unnoticed. Marcus remained present through key milestones, private trips, celebrations, gatherings. He wasn't peripheral, he was embedded. And slowly, questions began forming behind palace doors. Not from tabloids, but from staff, from insiders, from those trained to observe patterns. Why did his presence feel constant? Why did his name surface so often in moments of stress? Why did his influence seem immune to boundaries others respected? By the time the wedding arrived, his place in her life was no secret to those paying attention. He wasn't seated like a distant acquaintance, he was positioned like someone who mattered. Then came the late calls, the frequent check-ins, the private meetings explained away with ease. Nothing overt, nothing provable, just a series of moments that, taken individually, meant little. Taken together, they told a different story. Harry reportedly tried to ignore it, tried to trust, tried to believe that closeness didn't equal complication. But doubt doesn't announce itself loudly, it builds quietly. Why is he still here? He allegedly asked during one tense exchange. The answer, attributed to Meghan, was simple and devastating. Because he's the only one who never left. That kind of sentence doesn't disappear once spoken. Distance didn't dilute the connection. Even after relocation, even after new chapters, Marcus was reportedly still present at key events, still within orbit, still relevant. And when a casual conversation with a journalist reportedly drifted into personal territory, the words that followed would eventually fracture the narrative completely. People think the story ended when she married him. It didn't. It only changed shape. It wasn't framed as betrayal, it wasn't delivered dramatically, it was said like something obvious, like something that had never stopped being true. Those words weren't meant for publication, but once they leaked, the effect was irreversible. Headlines followed, analysis exploded, old photographs resurfaced, timelines were re-examined. Every appearance, every glance, every overlap began to carry new implications. What once looked innocent now felt loaded. Behind closed doors, silence replaced certainty. Harry reportedly withdrew, not from the media, but emotionally. Those close to him described confusion rather than rage, reflection rather than denial. He revisited memories, conversations, moments that once felt normal now felt misaligned. Small things began to bother him. Patterns he had dismissed returned with weight, trips that aligned too conveniently, communications that felt too frequent, a closeness that had never fully shifted. Arguments reportedly followed, not constant, but intense, focused, repetitive, always circling back to the same name, the same question, the same uncertainty. One account describes Harry discovering old photos on a device, images from years before royal life, before scrutiny, before global pressure. Marcus was in almost every frame, close, familiar, comfortable. That night reportedly changed something. Soon after, Harry retreated to create distance, officially for clarity, privately for space, and for the first time in years, physical separation entered a relationship that had once been defined by unity. While the personal fallout unfolded quietly, institutional anxiety grew elsewhere. The establishment had already endured years of reputational turbulence, but this was different. This wasn't about protocol. This wasn't about narrative control. This was about emotional credibility. Advisors reportedly expressed concern not over what had been said, but over what might still be unsaid. Because Marcus wasn't an outsider, he had proximity, access, history, and knowledge. And the danger of someone like that isn't in what they reveal publicly, it's in what they choose not to reveal at all. Conversations behind palace doors reportedly shifted from defense to anticipation, not about repairing image, but about preparing for unpredictability. The greatest uncertainty wasn't Meghan, it was Marcus. Silence became his strategy. No follow-up statements, no denials, no clarifications, just absence. And absence, when paired with implication, becomes louder than explanation. Over time, public attention moved on, as it always does. Stories faded, narratives shifted, but emotional damage doesn't disappear when headlines do. Those close to the situation suggest something fundamentally altered. Trust thinned, circles tightened, familiar connections grew distant, not dramatically, just subtly, slowly, permanently. Marcus was seen occasionally in public, calm, reserved, untouched by spectacle, always composed enough to leave observers wondering whether he knew more than he had ever shared. And maybe that was the point. Because the real impact of his alleged confession wasn't scandal, it wasn't betrayal, it was revelation. It exposed the fragile truth behind polished narratives, that power doesn't erase history, that proximity doesn't dissolve emotional bonds, that behind every grand image are human relationships shaped by complexity, dependency, and unresolved ties. Whether his words were truth, interpretation, or something in between no longer matters as much as the question they left behind. How much of what the world sees is performance, and how much is unresolved reality? Sometimes, all it takes is one quiet sentence to fracture an entire illusion, and once fractured, it never looks the same again.